There are halachas involved in getting dressed.
There are what? I didn't hear what you said. I'm sorry.
There are halachas involved in what has to be covered even for a man. So the covered is beyond that. So halacha needs to be covered too.
Yeah. Really go to school, and I know that her mother asked for that play date, but I never confirmed with her. Maybe with that mother, I couldn't get a hold of her. And eventually the school got a hold of that.
Dago, tell Mordechai we're all listening to his wife's conversation and it's mamish perfect. Tell him.
His wife's conversation?
Yeah, you didn't hear him talking to mommy about Rookie's conversation that she had?
He's been talking about this. I left for Meyer 25 minutes ago. He was talking about it then.
Well, tell him it's being broadcast live.
Rabbi, Rav Nut is in town.
Nut has been in town since Pesach.
I didn't know that. I saw him today. I didn't know. I thought that's why I called you before.
Oh, okay.
I saw him walking on Broadway.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I didn't know he was here.
He's been in since Pesach.
Okay, we should go visit him Shabbos afternoon.
You're right. You should. Okay.
Naftali, remember we went to pick him up, Naftali? We were late for him.
You remember he told you now's a good time to take a nap?
Yeah,
I remember that line, Michael. What?
I don't remember. What did he say to me?
No, we drove into Muncie and there was a detour and you missed the exit.
Yeah.
And you turned to him and you felt what's going, you had to turn around. You felt a little bad. You said, I'm sorry, I didn't sleep last night. I missed the exit. He turned to you sharply on the spot and said, so now you decide to take a nap?
I don't remember that.
It was great.
There's nothing like that out the literature. It's gewaldig. It's gewaldig. Okay, let's see. Chav Gimel Amud Beis, yeah? Tonight is a very, very, at least the second half of the daf is very much like a Kodshim Gemara. A lot of drushes back and forth. Yeah. Okay, so yesterday we were learning, that's where we left off. What does al besaroi mean? What do we darshan out from the pasuk al besaroi? Right. That, and we said one shot was that the pants of the kohen gadol, the kohen and kohen gadol have to go on first. They have to be on first, right? And then we had a machlokes Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan of midai. How do we darshan out the word midai? Right. Okay. So that's the word. So name a katana. Let's say that the machlokes Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan is really Machlokes Tanaim.
Wait, Siaka, where are you starting? I'm sorry, I can't find it.
Chav Gimel Amud Beis, around 10 lines up from the bottom.
All right, thank you.
No problem. Yeah, so name of Ketare, let's say it's a Machlokes Tanaim. Al Besari. So what do we learn out from the pasuk Al Besari? It says Al Besari, right? So you have to wear the clothing on your basar. So Matalmud Loimar Yilbash. So then what is it saying Yilbash? Of course, Yilbash means Al Besari. Right? The pasuk says Yilbash Al Besari. He should wear it on his skin. Right? So if it's on his skin, then that's what do you need, Yilbash, or the other way around, whichever it is. What do you darshan? So we say Lahavi mitznefes va'avneit la rama. What it comes to teach us is that you need the mitznefes and the avneit. You need the belt and the hat in order to do the Trumas Hadesh, and in order to go up and take off the ashes from the Mizbeach, you need the belt and the hat. There, Rabbi Yehuda, that's Shittas Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Daisai says the rabbi is big day kohen gadol b'yom kippurim. It's coming to include that the big day kohen b'yom kippurim sheksherin l'kohen hedjit, that they're kosher for a kohen hedjit. Meaning, once the kohen gadol uses the gadim on Yom Kippur, he's allowed to give them over to the kohen hedjit. Right, so we have a machlokes of what are we dashing out from
and what does the kohen hedjah do with them? He wears them during avoda.
He wears it, yeah. He wears them.
So every other kohen's wearing arba begadim, and he's wearing the shmona begadim.
This is going to be
No. The white begadim, the kohen.
You're ready in 15 minutes.
Somebody's got a parrot. You got to mute.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah. Wow, finally, somebody got to tell parrots to mute. Look at that. No, the kohen gadol wore two sets of begadim on Yom Kippur, the white and the gold. The regular white ones were the regular kohen's clothing from a whole year round. So that clothing of the white, so then he would give it over. Okay, so that's a machlokes. So Amar Rav, We had this Gemara. I don't. How long did we have this Gemara? Don't remember, but I know we had. At least I remember that we had this Gemara. Yeah, so I'm a Rav. State chuvas bedavar. There's two chuvas on this. Chada, one is
Rav?
What do I say, Rav?
Yeah.
I don't know what's with my site lately. I'm just reading words wrong. Amar Rebbe, thank you. Amar Rebbe. Yeah.
Excuse me. We were having a conversation before you got on. So is there in halacha, is there any rules about somebody having to wear underwear under his clothes?
Only out a separation between the top part of the body and the lower. So it needs to
the
have a belt.
kohanim did not have to do that.
Did they wear a gartel?
L'chara, they did not have to do that. Yeah, they had to have
They
a
wore
belt.
They had the belt. Isn't the belt the same as the underwear? I mean, not
No,
that's
the band of the underwear. That's it. That's the
Right.
band. As long as they have a band, yeah, they don't have to wear underwear. Isn't that why they say that it was a ramp also?
No, I'm not asking the kohanim. I'm asking about us now.
Oh, us. There's no din. No, as long as there's some sort of separation between the upper half of the body and the lower half, then you're fine. But no, that's a big shiloh. Like somebody's in the hospital with a robe, hospital robe, and he's just wearing a robe without underwear. So the davening is a shtickler issue, right? So you can put on a gartel or put the arm around that type of thing. Yeah.
Can I ask you a question? Is about the ink taken us as a nigger? Why is that not a problem for the kohen to wear gold on Yom Kippur?
I mean, stop. Why does he wear gold?
I thought, don't we stay away from gold on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur?
Yeah, but he only wears gold for his regular duties. Otherwise, he changes to the white.
Uh-huh.
That's why. No, isn't that why he changes to the white?
He said he wears it on Yom Kippur. No.
He switches back and forth 5. Well, it's 5 times. He switches back and forth between the white and the gold 5 times. But we'll get to that later on in the Masechta. Does the Shem? Yeah. So I'm a Rebbe. Shtei chuvas bedavar. There's 2 chuvas. Chuvas here doesn't mean answer. It means questions. I mean it's answers to Rabbi Yehuda. Chada. One is the avneta shekayin gadol loizeu avneta shekayin hedjit. Right, the belt of the kohen gadol is not the belt of the kohen hedjit. So how can you say that he could use it? Right. And then the second, the ones that the kohen gadol is obviously a holier, it's more of a kedusha. How can you say that you take clothing that's from somebody who's more kaddish and give it to somebody who's less kaddish? Elamatam aloymer yilbash. So then, what does yilbash tell us? Now we're on top of Aleph. The rabbis es ha-shchakim. It's coming to tell us that the worn out clothing. I mean, you could still, even when the clothing gets worn out and it gets into bad shape, it's still allowed to be used. Yeah, but as long as they're not torn, right? They can't be torn, right?
Does this
Go ahead, Gershi. Sorry.
Does this mean that Rebbe and Reb Doisa both argue with Rabbi Yehuda, and they hold that Trumas Hadashan does not need a mitzvah lahavnit? Otherwise, why wouldn't he agree to Rabbi Yehuda?
What do you mean? Who says
Rabbi
he
Yehuda
agrees?
says that I was saying that why can't he hold Yilbash is the same Josh as Rabbi Yehuda? Elamai, Rebbe and Reb Doisa are both chaylik, right?
L'chayra. Yeah. So you saw Rashi was a Reb Doisa l'tamei.
That's
Right?
Yaakov. Do the big day kohanim? Do they have the same din as like a talis, where it's like miyuchad for a certain thing, so there's a certain kedusha to them, or meaning like you were just saying that it goes if it goes from the kohen gadol to just a regular kohen hedyot, so it's going down in kedusha, but does it have that same din as like a talis, let's say, or because I mean it's just clothing, like you could switch them out consistently if you wanted to, right?
You could switch them out, but it's gonna have kedusha.
It's gonna have kedusha because you use it for the kohen use it for a mitzvah then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. I think so. That's
I
Okay,
thought he
so
was
then,
asking something else. Is a kohen hedyot or a kohen gadol, for that matter, are they allowed to wear their begadim home, or are they only allowed to wear them in the Beis Hamikdash for dvarim shebekdusha?
I think, I don't know. I thought you changed. It seems like from the Gemara later, tomorrow's daf, sure sounds like they change.
Yeah,
They
but
come-
it's not much, but it's a chiyuv. They did change.
Right.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
they
so
wanted
they
to
had a
get-
baseball game, all the
Well,
kohanim were wearing the big
they
day
get a
kahuna?
free slide. They get a free slides if they wear it to the pizza shop. What?
They get
changed. They
10%,
didn't-
10% discount.
Right. They didn't walk around with the big day kahuna.
No, we saw gedolim. They ate. They wore talis tefillin the whole day. Their whole day was a davar shebekdusha.
That's very nice.
Not
The
just for tefillin.
kohanim did not walk around with their clothes.
How do you know? You were there.
I mean, the answer to that is
What does
yes.
that mean?
The answer to
If
that
there
is
was a-
yes. But Aaron doesn't want, he's not going to admit it.
The hair is not
I'm
gray
sure
enough.
there were gedolei kahuna that were everything they did in a day was kaddish. Maybe they wore the big day kahuna the whole day. I don't know.
I don't know. I thought from the Gemara's mashma not, but maybe. I mean, there's a chashash that they're going to use are they ever on Me'ilah if they use it for their own personal use? I don't know. I
Yes.
think could be. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Then how can
It's
you wear it?
Yaakov. It's
Yeah.
Yaakov. The Gemara's
I
mashma
guess
that
that's how
even-
I knew it, but even though I wasn't there, I guess I had a way to know it.
Yeah. Anyway, what are you saying, Akiva?
the Gemara's mashma, even to take to dirty your clothing, right? Even in a service that would be considered right to bring it to dirty it, they would switch out of it. Meaning
Right.
you can see that there's this idea that they try to respect their clothing.
Correct. Yeah. So you're saying so then they would. That
So
means
like
you spread
meaning,
out.
obviously they still have to use the proper begadim. They have to wear begadim, but they wanted to use only ones that were already worn out. But it's mashma that stam to go ahead and walk around and just run around stam to go ahead and dirty it possibly. Why would they take that
Right.
chance? It's not
No,
mashma that like that.
I hear. That's a good point. I think that's a good point. Right. Okay, so let's see weiter. So then v'nichem sham, and they leave them over there, right? Melamed shatun and geniza. Oh, see, Simon, I think this is what you're asking, no? That it teaches us that there needs geniza, that needs to be put into shemus. They're right for the kohen hedget. So then, what are you going to do with nichem sham? You can't use it for another Yom Kippur. You can use it for a kohen hedger, but you can't use it for another Yom Kippur. Whatever it is, so you have a machlokes here now, whether you're allowed to use the kohen gadol's clothing or not. So my love, what's the machlokes? The marsav or avodahi. One holds that it's an avodah. So Rabbi Yehuda holds that taking off the trumas hadesh and the taking off the ashes is considered an avodah, right? Which is like Rabbi Yochanan. Umar Savar Lav Avodah, and Rav Daisa holds it's not an avodah, right? Because it's if he's not, he needs yilbash for something else. Right? So if he needs yilbash for something else, so it must be that it's not an avodah. So Gemara says no, the kuliyam avodah. Everybody holds it is an avodah. To take the ashes off the mizbeach is considered an avodah. This is the machlokes. It's marsav or tzricha kra rebuya. You need a pasuk to tell that to you. Meaning to tell you that you need the belt and the hat, right? Meaning, like we said yesterday, that don't think that because the pasuk only mentions two things: the pants and the shirt, right? The pasuk only tells you that. So you need so he's saying no. They both hold it's an avodah. One holds you need the pasuk to tell you. To tell you that you need all the clothing, you don't need the pasuk. Rabbi says you don't need the pasuk, so therefore you can use the pasuk for something else to tell you that you're allowed to give it to a kohen hedget. Okay, so it's not a machlokes tanaim. Fine. So boy, Rav Avin has the shaila trumas hadesh and bekama. How many ashes, or how much? How do you say it? How many ashes or how much ashes? How
May, how
He
much
brings here
ash?
how much ash?
How much ash? Oh,
How
very
much
good.
ash?
What percentage of ashes?
It's a percent? I don't know if it's a percent there, but how much ash? I guess, right. That would be, I guess, how much ash? Yeah. Okay. I don't know diktuk, not in Hebrew, not in English. Shine. Okay. So by Ravavin, Truma Zadesh and Bekama. How much ash do you have to take off? Trumas Meiser Yofinalo. Do we learn it out from Trumas Meiser, which is a tenth, right? Trumas Meiser is the Truma. Meiser goes to the Levi, that's 10%. And Truma is right, and he's to take off 10% of that and give it to the kohen. So Trumas Meiser Yofinalo, and Memela, he's got to take off 10% of the ashes. Or we learn it out from the truma from Midian, meaning when the Yidden conquered Midian, right? So then they what do you call it? They had to give Meiser. So how much was that Meiser? 1/500. Yeah. That's what Rashi says. It was 1/500. So that's a big difference in how many ashes have to be taken off. 10% versus 1/500%. So Toshima, the Tani Reb Chia, Nemar Kan Veherim. It says here Veherim, right? That you're supposed to separate. V'Nemar Lahalon Veherim, right? The same lashon as Truma, to separate. And it says later on that you have to separate. Yeah, meaning by the kohen's, what do you call it? It's called a koimitz, right? So just like over there, the kohen gadol, when he's taking his, the kohen gadol had to bring every day a carbon that got split into two, right? We had this before, made out of flour. So basically, what he did, he had to take his 3 fingers, right? 3 fingers, put the palm down into the flour, take the 3 fingers, scoop up, squeeze it, and pull it out, right? That's a koimitz. So just like over there, it's talking about it when it says veherim, it's a kaimetz, it's that much. Avkan becomes so to here it's a kaimetz, right?
Isn't
Which
that
is
interesting?
What
The
that
Gemara
gives
the
us
Gemara
2
asks
options and then it
2
gives us
options and picks a third.
Yes,
Exactly.
It's a fascinating thing, right? The Gemara says, well, it's either 1/10 or 1/500, and then the Gemara goes off to give a totally different shot.
Where does it come off with all these comparisons to a tenth, a 500?
What do you mean?
The Rashi says they learn out of Psukkah that from the lashon of Harei Meisim, similar to
That's
here.
what the Gemara, right? The Gemara is looking for anytime it says the word vaherim or some form of that word anywhere in the Torah. So we're saying, okay, should we compare it to this type of herim, that type of herim, this type? So the Gemara is going through. So in the Havamina, the Gemara had 2 options: either it was from Midian or Trumas Meiser, and then I guess the Gemara found the 3rd option, which was the Kemitza.
How did he do this on the hot ash?
No, he did it on the flour. The flour. It was done in the flour.
The Trumas Hadeshin.
What?
The Trumas Hadeshin.
No, he just had. No, he didn't. I don't think it means that he did it with his hands. Just that amount, whichever amount. Right, but it's interesting because that amount. What size kohen? Right? There's no set. You're right. I mean, W, you're really right. When you're taking it out, that's a subjective measurement.
Yes,
you have
it's
a big
subjective.
tall kohen. You have a big tall kohen. He's going to get much more flour out than a small kohen. Right? So how do you know how much it is? Yeah.
I mean, the kasha l'chayr is both ways. On the other options also, you have a big pile of ash. You have no idea really quantify that much ash to say, oh, this is 1%. This is 1/5 of a percent. How would you know that?
Right.
You're not taking up the whole marach,
No, but you
putting it in a measuring cup.
No, but at least you working with a base measurement. It's either going to be 10% or 1/500. But here, the point is you have no measurement.
Compared to Trumas Meiser, that's 10% or 10% of 10%. That's 1%. The Trumas Meiser, is it not?
1/10.
I learned
1/10 is separated.
I learned.
Why didn't you just say? Oh, I thought it was 100. Because it's a
You're
tenth
saying
of a
it's truma
tenth.
from truma.
Yeah.
Right.
Otherwise, there's a massive difference between 10% and a fifth of a percent.
Yes, there is.
Between 1% and a fifth of a percent is already a big difference.
Right. Right.
But either way, it's always going to be subjective to what the kohen thinks is actually there.
No, but that's subjective to what measurement he takes off the ashes. But what measurement is he working with?
Yeah, it's a different kind of okay. To be
But at
all the
least he
same
has a-
amount.
I'm saying, how do you say that it's the kohen from the kohen gadol if you don't know what size kohen gadol you're talking about?
You base it on the kohen that's taking it, what his kohenim would normally be, and he makes an estimate.
Is that what it is? Does that mean that it's based on his own personal kohen?
Yeah, it's because that's the one he could be oimid on.
Okay, I hear that. Okay.
And
that could
Rashi
be.
himself said that's the minimum shear. You could obviously go above that.
Correct. This
The
is right.
kohen's not
This is
going
just-
in there and doing kmitza.
Right. No, he's not going to do kamitza, right? He's just going to, that's the minimum share he needs to take. Yeah.
I just find it funny, like it seems like it's the more mistaver, like the Gemara seems to be saying, like in the Teretz, it's saying it's more mistaver. The drasha came from the why is kmitza the more mistaver drasha?
I don't know.
Meaning, obviously the Gemara had different ways of saying we could darshan this or we could darshan that way, and it's saying no mistaver. It's similar to kmitza. Like,
Yeah.
what makes it similar?
I don't know.
Yeah, because those other two measurements weren't in the mikdash. They were general measurements.
That's a good try.
Yeah, I hear that. No, but it's I don't. That's what I'm saying. It's drushas. This is very much a kudsh of Gemara. It's just drushas. It's very hard to figure out when and why they decide to darshan one way versus another way. Right? Okay, so let's divide this. Amar Rav, arba avodas. There are 4 avodas that zar chayav and misa. That if a zar, literally translated as a stranger, meaning a yid, is going to be chayav misa. Right? Yeah. So 1 second, I lost the place. Amar Rav, arba avodas zar chayav and misa. There's 4 avodas that are zar is chayav misa. Zrika. Right, that's the throwing the blood onto the Mizbeach. Haktara is burning the anything. That's really it's or anytime burning anything. It could be the k'tairas. It could be putting the what do you call it? The evarim and pedarim onto the Mizbeach, and also burning the korban mincha. Nisuch hamayim is pouring the water. That's on Sukkos, right? When the korban tamid they had the nisuch hamayim. Right, and Nisuch hayayin, and then every korban, not every, but oilers and shlomim, all need Nisuch hayayin together with it. And if he does any of these 4, if yisroel does any of these 4, he's chayim b'dei shemayim. Levi Yomar af trumas adeshen, which is why this Gemara is brought down. He says there's a 5th that even if a yid runs up the ramp and he beats the kohanim at their own game, right, which could really make a disaster, right, because now you add yidden into the mix. But even Trumas Adeshen is he adds on 1 more, so it's 5 according to Levi. Rav obviously holds it's not. Tani Levi b'mastisa, and Levi also said that in the Mishnah that af truma, not his Mishnah, in his brises, af truma sadeshen, even truma sadeshen. It's interesting. I didn't know what this meant. V'chein tani Levi b'masnise. Levi's an Amoira, so Levi taught it in his brises, right?
Reb Chia was also an Amoira. He brought a brisa before. It means the brises that he learned. He was the Kabbalist brisa.
V'chein tani Levi, right? So it means tani Levi. No, but here it says b'masnise. In
his list of brises, he had this.
He accumulated the brises that he accumulated. This was his one, but doesn't mean that he wrote in the brice.
They bring down from Rashi and Baba Metzia that it means that he collected brises. This was included in the brises he had collected.
Yeah, this was his brisa collection.
Correct.
Yeah, I wonder how much his brisa collection was worth. Yeah.
I'm just curious. The Gemara over here, Rav and Levi, they're discussing. Is the Gemara bringing this to show another shita that holds that it's an avodah?
Yeah, that's going to be part of the machlokes. Yeah, 100%.
So my shadow is like this: if somebody goes up to if a zar goes onto the mizbeach, what's the chiyuv? Even if he doesn't do an avodah, he's allowed
If he
in that
just
part. of the
goes
Beis
onto the Mizbeach?
Yeah, I thought you're not allowed to go in that part anyways. I mean, would Rabbi Chaylik on the din? What is the din for a zar going on the
They're
mizbeach?
talking about if he's high of Misa.
Yeah, I'm asking. Without
Yeah, all the way
doing
around, I
Tumas
think it's
Hadashin.
also. I don't know. Is it also for Yisroel to go on the Mizbeach?
I don't think he's allowed in that part.
What?
I don't think he's allowed in that part of the base of English. What's the din if he goes to the wrong part of the base of English?
Depends when.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Well, I don't think there's an isser. They don't allow him because there has to be an Ezra's Kahuna somehow. They have to do their work. But I don't think there's an isser for anyone to go into Ezra's Kahuna. There's only an isser to go into the Ulam, the Kodesh Kadosh.
Is there an issue to go on the Mizbeach?
I don't think so.
I don't know.
Not Me'ila, you're not using it. You're just there.
I don't know, man. Did they give Mizbeach tours in the tour of the base of English? They give Mizbeach tours?
They were allowed to do.
No, because
Shechita they could do, yeah, but they don't.
But
That's
that
not on
means
the
they were allowed
Mizbeach.
to be there.
But that's not on the Mizbeach. The Shechita.
the Gemara deals with Shita. It has to be a long night. They have to be outside, whatever, all of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm
No, that's
fascinated
that.
that they don't get Misa for Kabbalah. The first real avodah is Kabbalah, and they don't get Misa for that. Every other avodas are karbanos they get for.
We're going to see
Kabbalah,
now.
they
We're going to see soon what the qualifications are for being Chayim Misa. Yeah. Let's see. Right, it's getting late. My time of the Rav. What's the reason for Rav? Right? Why does he hold that the Trumas Hadeshin? Why does he hold only these four and not even the Trumas Hadeshin? Yasiv va'ata ubanecha itcha tishmeru es kunaschem lechol dvar hamizbeach u'libeis lach paroiches va'avadetem avodas matana eten es kunaschem va'zara karev yumas. Right? That's a long pasuk. Yeah. So basically, it's the pasuk goes through. That you come to the Mizbeach and the Mibeis Varoiches and you do the Avodah, and a Zor that comes close is Yumas. So we're dashing out from this pasuk, Avodas Matana, any Avodah that has to do with putting things down, like on the Mizbeach, that's what the Zor gets Misa for. V'loy Avodah Siluk, not an Avodah that has to do with removing things from the Beis HaMikdash or from the Mizbeach. Right? And that's one way to dash it. And again, putting things on the Mizbeach is what a Yid is not allowed to do, or that he's going to be Chayav Misa for. Taking things off, not a problem. Then the next way to dash is Vavadetem, and it says, and you should do the work. Avodah Tama, it has to be Avodah that finishes off that particular Avodah. But if the Yid does an Avodah, but doesn't complete it, right? Meaning, if he's going to take, maybe makabel the blood, right? Like Gershon just asked. So let's say Yid's makabel the blood, so that's not the end. That's not the end of the procedure, right? The avodah has to go. He has to continue with the avodah to put it onto the mizbeach. So since he didn't finish with since that's not the end avodah for that particular thing, therefore Yid is not chayav. So it's two things. It's two requirements, according to Rav. One, that it has to be putting on and not taking off, and it also has to be the final process of that particular avodah. The Levi says, Rabbi Rahman l'chol dvar mizbeach. No, the Torah is including everything that's on the mizbeach, meaning anything that goes on the mizbeach, the Yid is chayav misa for. Right, so therefore he holds that the Trumas Hadeshin goes on top of the Mizbeach, right? So it's on top of the Mizbeach. So then that's it.
What about the Maracha? What about putting stuff in the Maracha?
So we're going to discuss that. We're going to discuss it. V'Rav. So what does Rav do with that? No, that's coming to include the 7 times that you when you bring a chatos, yeah. So you have to sprinkle it, right? There's 5 different chatois that you have to sprinkle it. So if you do that, then the kohen is going to be chayav, yeah. For Sheva Mitzayra and also for the Mitzayra, that also needs to, he also needs to sprinkle onto the Mitzayra. So therefore, He sprinkles the oil on the heichal, whatever it is, any of the sprinkling that goes on with the mitzayra, or for the korban chatas, he says that's going to be chayav misa. Right? Now how come he didn't include this in the counting? Right? If he holds it to chayav misa, why? Unless he's calling that zrika, he's including that under zrika. It's included in the zrika. Okay, I hear it. It's meaning all zrikas. Yeah, okay. For Levi, how does Levi know that you're going to be chayav misa? Nafkalei mi dvar v'chol dvar. It says dvar and chol dvar. So that's coming to include anything that has to do with the Mizbeach and inside of Rav. Dvar v'chol dvar loy darish. Rav doesn't dash in the words dvar and chol dvar. Fine. So now the Gemara asks on Levi, why don't we say that when the pasuk says anything in the Mizbeach, that's a klal, meaning that's just a blanket statement, and that would include anything that's on the Mizbeach. If a yid does it, he's chayav misa. Avodas matana prat, and then when the pasuk says that it's only an avodah that of placing, that's a specific thing. And then we know the rule from anybody that says Rabbi Shmuel Omer every day, klalu prat. If you have a rule followed by a specific, then the rule is only applicable to the prat. And what does the prat tell you? Avodas matana in. The avodah of putting it on the Mizbeach applies. Avodah siluk loy. And removing doesn't count. Right? Which is like Rav. And because they're Levi saying that you're chayav even if you take off the ashes. But Rav is saying not like that. So the Gemara answers, no, Amar Kra, because the pasuk says on Talmud Beis, only mi beis la paroiches vavadtem. It says that you're going to do it inside the paroiches and vavadtem and do the avodah, right? So because the avodah, the word avadatem, comes after the word mi beis la paroiches, so therefore it means only things that go on in the kodesh, right? And not anything that goes on in the chotzer, right? So that's doing elmi beis la paroiches, meaning only things that are inside the paroiches. Who the avodas matana v'lo avodas siluk. That's where the avodah of putting it on the mizbeach is going to be chayav misa, and not the avodah of removing. But if it's on the outside, afilu avodas siluk, then even the avodah of siluk is going to be a problem, right? So now he's limiting what he's saying, right? Avodah siluk is going to not be a problem in the kodesh kedoshim, but outside it's going to be a problem.
Even no avodah is going to be a problem with the kodesh kedoshim. Why do you need the Torah to tell us that?
What?
You can't go into the kodesh kedoshim no matter what. You don't need the Torah to tell you to differentiate between the kodesh and kodesh kedoshim.
No, but let's say the yid does it.
He's chayav misa for going into the kodesh kedoshim. No.
Okay, that could be.
So then, what do you need the Torah to be mechalik?
I don't know. That's what Rashi says. It's talking about taking out the kaf and the.
He didn't have Eidim in his rosh. He's not chayav misa. So what's the din on the thing?
Either way, he's not. Then he wouldn't be chayav misa in the other case.
No, because one is bidei shemayim. I don't know. Is the chiyuv
so there's no bidei
shemayim or
I'm not sure. I'm asking. Maybe
I don't know.
I hear.
I don't know. You're right. You're right. It's not very practical, but that's what he's saying.
More than just practical, how can you make a drush like that if we already know the din? Why would you have to be machalik if that's not true? If it's anyways true, because you're chayav misa no matter what, just going in without the avodah.
No, but he's saying you wouldn't be chayav misa. Maybe there's a second chiyuv.
You would only be chayav misa for on avodas matana in the kodesh kedoshim. My shaila is, who cares about avodah or not avodah in the kodesh kedoshim? Chayav misa for being there.
And a kohanim, but I don't know. Maybe it would be a difference in chiyuv misa b'dei shemayim. I'm not sure.
Do you hear? I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you say kimle? I don't know. Is it only because of the avodah? I don't know.
I don't know.
What happens if he was a worker and they let him in with the sky hook, and because he had to plaster the wall, and then he did one of the avodas, so he was allowed to be in.
Why would they be doing avodah on Yom Kippur? Why would they be doing regular work on Yom Kippur? That wouldn't work. He's chayav mitzvah for doing avodah on Yom
It
Kippur.
was an
also.
emergency plumbing job. They had to bring
You're
the
not
guy.
allowed to do that on Yom Kippur.
So,
If it's emergency, maybe.
Emergency
Okay,
on Yom Kippur, you're not allowed to.
Okay, so let's see. Yihachi, right? So
Can
now
I
Gemara
ask
asks,
just
let's see.
Can I ask a general question here?
Yeah,
I've never heard of any of these being called avodah before. Removing the machta of ketores is an avodah.
I think he had to be dressed in the begodim. I mean, why shouldn't it be an avodah?
I don't know. It's not. It doesn't. The Torah says to remove it, so the Torah says to put it there.
I don't
All
know.
the
It's part of the
avodas are in the
Mishnah.
Torah.
Part of the Mishnah is that he has to do that. He has to go back in and take it. Why not just leave it there? He has to go back in and get it.
It's part of the
You
avoda.
can't- Once it's used, it's garbage.
Gershon, but
Just
part
then
of it
why
is
does he have to
you
go
still
back and get
You
it?
have to
Just
get rid
leave
of it to do it, otherwise it won't burn properly. You have to be able to use the instruments of the avoda properly. You have to handle them properly to do the avoda. So part of the avoda is maintenance, essentially taking off the burn parts and all that stuff. There's a whole pile. I don't remember if it's on the side or outside, whatever. They throw all the ashes and stuff. Of course, it's part of the avoda.
Yeah, that's what it has to be. It's mucha from the Gemara.
Dishon HaMenorah is part of the avodah.
Right.
That's brought as an avodah.
Yeah. Okay, let's go. We got to go. It's already. It's late. So Ihachi, if that's the case, then vavadatem nami. Then the word vavadatem should also tell you, right? El mi beisla paroichas hu da avodah tam avodah avodah sheyesh acharei avodah. So then you should say the other part of pasuk too. When it says vavadatem, should also say only in the kodesh hakadoshim. If you finished off an avodah, meaning bringing in the coals with the ketores into the kodesh hakadoshim, that's when you should be chayav, but not an avodah that doesn't have after an avodah. Habechutz mashma, but if it's something that took place outside, afilu avodah sheyesh acharei avodah, then even if it would be an avodah that has after an avodah, you would still be chayav misa, according to Levi. Meaning there was two drushes we took from the pasuk, right? One, if there's an avodah afterwards, then the chayav is not chayav misa, and one is that he's putting it down, not taking it. So if you're saying that the not taking it is only for the kodesh hakadoshim, so that means the not completing the job is also only for the kodesh hakadoshim, and afterwards it's not like that. So Gemara says vavadatem hodar arve kra. When it says vavadatem, then it's mixing everything back, right? So it goes on everything. It cuts back on the rest of the psukim, and therefore it goes back on all the avodas of the Beis Hamikdash. Okay, fine. Bye, Rava. Avodas siluk beheichal mau. Taking off something from the Mizbeach, but it happened in the heichal, right? So what's the din there? Lifnim medaminalo. Do we say that it's like the kodesh hakadoshim, or lechutz medaminalo, or do we compare it to chutz, right? Which is the Mizbeach and the chutzah, meaning there's three areas in the Beis Hamikdash, right? There's Kodesh Kedoshim, then there's the heichal, right, which is the Mizbeach Hazav, and then they had the Mizbeach Hachitzon. So we said now the Kodesh Kedoshim is going to be for sure chayiv. The Mizbeach Hachitzon is not going to be unless it's the final work, the final avodah of that particular avodah, or only for placing, not removing. What about the middle mizbeach? Which is that? Is that compared to the kodesh hakadoshim or to the outer one? So other pashto mi base. Then he said pshat because it says mi base ulam mi base, right? So therefore it applies side. What's a double lashon of mi base ulam mi base? So that tells you even the mizbeach hazav you'd have the same. You'd have a chiyuv misa. Elameata so zesh shasidur is a shulchan l'chayiv. If that's the case, where was the shulchan? The shulchan where they put the 12 loaves of bread every Shabbos. Where was that? That should also be a problem. So if the Zar takes the bread and puts it onto the table, it should be chayim misa. So we say no, because after you put the bread, there's still another thing to do. It's not the final avodah, because after the bread, you have to put on the 2 cups of frankincense. Right? You have to put on the 2 cups of frankincense on the table. So, okay, so then Gemara asks, see the bezichin l'chai. So then if the Yid is the one to put on the frankincense, that he should be chayiv. No, so we say no. There's another avodah to do after that. Ikosiluk v'aktorah. You still have to take it off after the next Shabbos. You got to take it off and then you got to burn it. So that's not the final avodah. So then the Gemara asks, okay, so zor shasidur as a menorah l'chayiv. The zor that's mesader the menorah should be chayiv. So we say no, because that's the final thing. Gemara says no, it's not. Ikon esinas psila. You still got to put in the wick, even though he sets up the oil on the menorah. You still got to put in the wick. So we say nasam psila l'chayiv. Okay, so the guy that puts in the wick, if a yisroel puts the wicks into the menorah, should be chayiv. So we say no, ikon esinas shemen. You still have to put the oil. Meaning, I said before mesader. Mesader meant to clean it out. Right now it's saying psila, now it's saying put the oil. Nasan shemen l'chayiv. Then one says, okay, so if he puts the shemen, you should be chayiv. No, the Gemara answers no. Ika hadlaka. There's still another process that has to be done after that. There's hadlaka. So the Gemara says, okay, hidluk l'chayiv. So if a yid decides to go light the menorah, he should be chayiv. Hadlaka lava avodah. Oh, lighting the menorah is not an avodah, right? What's a pshat in that? Because it's not. You're just touching the fire to the wick, and that's it. So it says veloy, and touching the fire to the wick is not an avodah. Vatani will under the price of another b'nei Aaron a kohen ish Mizbeach or b'tzvei Ishmael eish. Right, and b'nei Aaron put fire onto the Mizbeach, and they set up the eitzim al eish limid al atzasa alisa. It's that comes to tell us, to teach us about. They used to what happened was they used to, if the fire started going out, they would take these wood chips and light them up on the Mizbeach. So that teaches you that that's an avodah. Shaloite ela b'kohen kosher u'b'kli sharetz. That whoever's going to keep the fire going with these wood chips on the Mizbeach has to be a legit kohen, a kosher kohen, right? And it has to be kli sharetz, meaning he has to even be wearing the gadol. So you see that lighting fire in the Beis HaMikdash is considered an avodah. So lighting the menorah should also be an avodah. So our answer is atzasas al yasa avodah. The lighting up the wood on top of the mizbeach, that's an avodah. Hadlaka lav avodah. Because hadlaka is not an avodah, right? All you're doing by lighting the wick is you're just touching it and then it burns from there. But to get the Mizbeach to light up better with all these wood chips, you actually have to do an avodah.
So Yaakov, the Gemara is cricking with all the Svarim and Kedoshim that Aaron HaKoyin lit the menorah every day for 38 years. It was like Yom Kippur every day, 365 for 38 years for Aaron HaKoyin. So it sounds like an avodah to me. I don't know. I hear. I don't know how you would answer this form of Kedoshim. Yeah, I hear that. So then what says Elamiyata, Zesh Shasidur Asamarocha L'chayev. This is what Akiva was asking. So the person is Masader, which if a yisroel goes onto the Mizbeach and he's Masader, the wood, then he should be chayev. So the Gemara says, no, there's still another thing to do even after you put up the wood. Because Ikosidur Shnei Gzirei Eitzim, there's being Masader the 2 blocks of wood. Right, that I think we said a few days ago in the daf that's you should. There's 2 blocks of wood that you put on there, so then that's the later avodah. So Gemara says, okay, so if the yid puts on the 2 blocks of wood, see the shnei gzirin l'chayev. Okay, so if the yid brings up the 2 blocks of wood, then he should be chayev. So we say no, ikasidur avarim. You still got to go up there and bring all the avarim, all the fats and the limbs, and put it on top of the mizbeach. Right. So the Gemara asks on that, but we have Rav Asi said that the one, if a yid puts the pieces of wood, the 2 pieces of wood on top of the mizbeach is chayiv, right? So what it says, this is what they're arguing. One holds that it's the end of the avodah. So Mamela, a yid is going to be chayiv. The other one says it's not an avodah tam because you still have to put on all the fats and all that. So that's their machlokes, whether putting those 2 blocks of wood is considered an end avodah or not. If you hold it's an end avodah, then if a yid goes and puts the 2 blocks of wood on top of the mizbeach, he's going to be chayiv. Fine.
What does that mean that the Seder Avarim is part of the avodah? It's not the Avarim, bringing the Avarim on the base from your carbon is part of the avodah of the maracha. It has nothing to do with the
that's
carbon
part
itself.
That's part of what we said. That's considered burning. That's burning.
Right, but isn't that comes after the zrika, correct?
That comes
that
after
part
the zrika.
So that's not the avodah tama of the carbon. The zrika is to be mechaper. So this is still connected to the animal, no? Is it separate from that avodah of bringing the animal? Right, halacha. We said halacha shchita. That's all not considered avodah tama.
Right.
But avarim comes after the zrika, no?
Avarim definitely comes after the zrika.
And it's still considered an avodah that connects to the maracha. It's
Yeah.
avodah at all.
Why not?
So it connects to maracha, but it doesn't connect to the carbon.
I would think. But
How does it connect to the maracha? It's from the carbon that you already brought.
Right.
So I'm saying, what does it have to do with the maracha?
Well, you're saying that they're two separate things.
I think the avarim has nothing to do with anything. It's not here nor there. Zrika ends the avodah of the carbon, and the avarim are not really connected to the maracha. What does that have to do with the maracha? It's from the carbon.
Right. I hear. Okay, I'm not
Isn't
sure.
that the purpose of the maracha, to burn karbanis?
I guess, right? That's
I hear, but I'm just saying it's not really. It's not. What's the avodah of either one? Really, that's the truth. Like, what's the avodah of it?
Right. Fair enough. Okay, let's finish up here because it's late. So let's see. Tanika. Okay, so that's that. Now the Gemara brings prices. Tanika say the Rav. Tanika say the Levi. We have a brisa that's like Rav, and we have a brisa that's like Levi. Tanika say the Rav. Avodas shazor chayv le'em misa. Any of the avodas that are a yisroel is chayv misa. Zrikas dam. Bein lifnim, bein lifnai lifnim. Right, throwing the blood, whether it's lifnim, right, in the heichal or in the kodesh hakadoshim. Pamaza bechata sa'if, pamamatza makter b'oil sa'if, and it also goes on somebody who sprinkles, right, chata sa'if, the bird. Pamamatza, and the one who, if you squeeze out v'amakter b'oil sa'if, and you squeeze out the blood from the bird, which is also another avodah, and be makter oil sa'if, v'manasach shloish lugan mayim v'shloish lugan yayin, and if you manasach 3 lug of mayim, 3 lug of wine, right? And this doesn't say anything. That's a list of all the things that if a yid does it, he's going to be chayav. Nowhere on this list is the yid taking off the ashes. So that brisa is like Rav. Tanikav say the Levi avodas shazor chayav alein misa. What are the avodas that are Yisroel's chayav misa? Hamerim es hadeshen. So right there, that's Levi's shita, removing the ashes. The sheva azoy shebefnim, the 7 times that they sprinkle inside the heichal, and then when they sprinkle onto the mitzayra, v'amayla al gabi mizbeach, bein davar kosher, bein davar pasol. And if you bring anything onto the mizbeach, whether it's kosher or it's pasol, that's all going to be chayav. The yid is going to be chayav misa. So that brisa is very clear, like Levi. So then, okay, so that's the end of that sugi. Let's just start the next sugi for a minute. Lama mafisin. Why do they do the lottery? Right? So we said they do the lottery to decide which kohen gets which thing. So the Gemara says lama mafisin kedam moran, like we said, because there became a sakana for them to be fighting going up the ramp. Ella lama mafisin v'chayzinu mafisin. No, so why did they do a lottery and then they do 4? Why did they do 4 lotteries at 4 different times? Right? They should have done it all at once and give out all the jobs at once. So Rabbi Yochanan, a very interesting answer. In order to make from the word regesh, right? To make it happening. Yeah, excitement, to make it happening. Shenemar, asher yachtav namtig side, right? Together we may take sweet side. The base elikim nahalach baragish. In the house of Hashem, we're going to go with I guess excitement. Yeah. So that's why they did it 4 different lotteries, because that made it exciting. It made it exciting throughout the day of Yom Kippur. Okay, now the next Gemara is what type of clothing they wore, and we'll start that. We'll do that sugi tomorrow, B'ez Hashem. All right.
So Yaakov, excuse me, this blot, there's very wimpy kohanim in this blot.
As opposed to yesterday?
Let the Zarm run all over the Migdash. Why do they knock him out with a bat? Why are they letting him run around like Mishagoyim for?
What do you mean? Who's running around?
The kohanim are letting these Zarm, all these who do all these, what are they letting him there for? When they throw him out? Wimpy kohanim.
You mean why he's letting the Yidden? Okay.
Yeah, this blood is very wimpy kohanim.
Okay.
It was already after the pious was set up. They were scared to hit anyone or bring knives into the place of Mikdash. They had nothing to use.
Well, they had plenty what to use. There was a lot of lishkas. Not every lishka is written in the Gemara. You know what I mean?
I don't know. He could be the yisroel snuck in the middle of the night. You don't know.
No, it means that's why one of the lishkas was called lishkas aparva. There was some lishkas that weren't so parv.
Ah, very good. Very good. Yeah. All right. Fine.
Yeah,
Mr. Yaakov, I had a shallow for you. But I'd rather ask it privately. If I could call you for a minute.
You can call. Well, as soon as that.
Unless you're busy.
I'm not. Yeah, you can call me.
Okay.
Fine. All right, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you. Have a good night.
No,
Thank you.
how you feeling, Elio? Did he log off? All right.